What's up guys, and welcome back to another Revit tools video. In this video we're going to cover the Demolish tool. My goal for this video is that you leave this video with the knowledge of what the Demolish tool does, why you use it, and what kind of circumstances you might use it. So being straightforward, I don't think I have ever used this tool, but because it's here and because we're covering every Revit tool, I do want to cover it because even though I haven't used the tool itself, I have plenty of times used what the tool does. There's a purpose for the tool, and there's a really good reason as to why you would want to demolish something. So I've got a number of situations set up here with different model elements, whether it be doors, windows, stairs, different types of elements you might find in your model that you can demolish. And we can look at the effects that that has. We'll also look a bit into phasing because demolishing anything has to do with phasing. Now I do want to save phasing for a completely separate video because phasing is somewhat complicated and does, in my opinion, require its own video. But for this video in particular, let's look at the Demolish tool. So I am actually going to give you a slight preview to phasing just so there's a basic understanding of what's happening when we use the Demolish tool. So in the Manage tab in Phases, under Phasing, you can see that by default you have two project phases, one being existing, one being new construction. And I'm assuming that this is like a fresh out of the box template. There's nothing done behind the scenes. You're not using a special template. All I'm using is the basic out of the box architectural template that ships with Revit. So under the project phases we have existing and new construction. So by default Revit is set up to where every model element that is modeled is just in new construction. The phase is new construction. Basically, when are things happening? And it's very important to make sure everything you model is in the correct phase because it has to do with visibility and documentation down the line. And again, that's mainly for another video, but you can see there's a past and a future on either end. So in the past is existing, and the future being right now, the latest phase is new construction. The phase filters tab, this is, I'm going to save specifically for the other video that covers the different types of phases when it comes to visibility, and that's everything that has to do with visibility here. So let's skip over to the graphic overrides, and this is basically how Revit is going to display certain model elements based on their phase. So the existing phase, the projection surface lines will be solid, and when you go to new, the patterns, the cut patterns are solid, and so one of the big things is that demolished are dashed lines, and this is kind of a rule of thumb. You have the power to change all of these. You can change these different line types, line weights, everything for what a new line weight of model element looks like. I would, and you can go as far as even changing these materials, but when it comes to anything phasing, the only thing I would ever change is adding a phase, and simply that. But again, we're not going to cover that in this video. It's just showing the graphic overrides, and I'll say the reason I'm showing you the graphic overrides is we're going to see as we change these phases using the Demolish tool how things will begin to look. So with that in mind, let's actually now look at the Demolish tool. Okay, so now the Demolish tool. When you first select the Demolish tool, normally if it's any other tool, you've got some extra information up here in the bar, or maybe looking down here, it'll give you an idea of what you should do. There's not a whole lot to do. Basically all it's telling you to do is to click on an element and mark it as demolished. And so let's look at this wall first, and I'll scroll down to the bottom where we see face, and we see the face created as new construction because yes, I've modeled all this in new construction. None of it's been changed to existing. I've changed nothing to existing. It's all new construction. And obviously, because we want it there and because it's modeled in new construction, it's not been demolished. So something I generally do is really when I use the demolish tool, I end up using the phase demolish over here, and this is just a by element thing. It's an instance thing. Um, so I don't end up using the tool itself, but I'll show you the function of the tool in this case. So most of the time when I'm demolishing anything, I'm generally going to demolish it as if it were, I mean, you're going to demolish existing. You don't typically build something new and demolish it. You can do that, and Revit will allow you to represent things that way, but that doesn't make any sense. So I'll change this wall to an existing wall. hmm Of course, of course, that makes sense. So I can't, and that's basically telling me that I cannot, and I actually tried to change the phase demolish to existing. Basically, I was trying to demolish this wall as an existing wall, but it's actually a new construction wall. So I clicked the wrong button, but in reality, that we could use that as a learning point too. The phase created is what I wanted to change, and I'm going to change now this wall to an existing wall. So something to note here, when I zoom in here, you can see that the hard edges of this wall are a darker gray, and that goes perfectly with, if we look at the phasing graphic overrides, you can see that these lines, there are actually, there's our gray there, compared to, and again our gray there, compared to our darker black. So that's just something to take note. It's Revit's default way of easily allowing you to see that the wall is existing. Now I can of course also click on it here and see that it's existing, but now maybe I want to demolish this wall. This wall is going to go away. So then I could use in the Modify tab, the Demolish tool. If I click on this wall, you clearly see that it's demolished. And again, these lines and everything like this is noted from that phasing overrides. It's getting all of this graphical information from those overrides. But something also that's unique about the Demolish tool, once you demolish an element, it loses its joins, so it becomes kind of a single element within everything else, in this case within new construction walls, and it does gain that new graphical um, view. So that's great. We have an existing wall that we've demolished, so basically we have these three walls that we're left over with. That may be what we want in this case. So something else I can do, and this is again probably something I would never do, I could actually go to the Demolish tool and I could demolish this wall that's in new construction. So I'll demolish it, and again we get the same basic effect. Now it's a demolished wall. That's great. Now there's one differentiation between these two walls that is graphical. If I zoom in here again, I could see the edges of this existing wall are gray because it is existing, and the edges of this new wall are black because it's a new construction. So if I look at this wall over here, I can see that the face created is new construction. Exactly. I didn't touch it, but I actually demolished it, so the face demolished is new construction. So you can show things this way. Most of that, like I'm not going to go and demolish a wall that's in new construction. It just doesn't make any sense. Uh, Definitely let me know in the comments if there's a particular time that you had to do that, or if there's a reason that you do that. I'd love to know why, because it's not something I've ever had to do. So now I'm going to go to look at the view properties. So I've pressed escape. I'm not selecting any element, and I'm looking down here at the phasing, specifically the phase filter. And because my phase is new construction, I'm not going to change that. But the phasing in the view properties here, it's just what you're going to see. And so now, because I've defaulted this view to show all, I'm seeing every phase because I'm seeing a new construction wall that's been demolished in new construction. I've seen now also an existing wall that has been demolished in the phase new construction. I have all these new construction walls. So basically I'm seeing everything. Now we probably don't want to display things that way everywhere, so let's take a look at these options. So what happens when I show demo plus new is essentially nothing. And why is that? You might think, well, something should have changed. Well, I'm actually seeing all the new walls still, because that's not changed. But I'm also seeing the demolished walls. And that actually does begin to make sense when you read this and think about what it should do. So if I go to previous plus demo, I'm only seeing what's in the previous phase, which is this one wall, and that's also demolished. And I've lost every other element in my entire project, so this is probably not what I want. Let's go to show previous phase. Well, I have nothing that's left in the existing phase that's not demolished, so I don't see anything. I'll go back to show all so we can see everything again. But if I go to previous plus new, then I'm left with no demolished walls. And this is typically how you might go about projects, because yes, you'll have demolished plans where you'll show demolished walls and demolished elements, but when it comes to like showing a finalized floor plan of a phase new construction, of a model in new construction, you definitely don't want to show things that are demolished. So that this is how you might do it, showing previous plus new. So I'm going to go back to show all so we can see everything again, and we'll start to see what some of these elements look like as we use the demolish tool and demolish them. But before that, so we don't end up getting all of these new construction lines and honestly get confused with the phase being new construction and being demolished in new construction, I'm going to change these elements to existing before I demolish them. And just so we could see that a little more clearly, I will put this back to show previous plus new so we can see things, in a sense, disappear when they're demolished. So let's go to the demolish tool here, and actually I will change this door to be an existing door. Again, you can see the gray on the outline of the door showing that it's existing. Basically, I can see it in passing and know that it's existing. Let's click on the door. I will now demolish the door, and because the door was existing and because I demolished the door is gone. It's disappeared. It's not going to show up in this view, although there is a remnant of it at least. You can see that something used to be there, but now the wall, the new wall, is filling that void. And I'm kind of expecting that we'll see the same thing with this window. I'm going to change the window to existing, go to the demolish tool, demolish the window, and sure enough we see the same thing, but we can see where that new construction wall is infilling through that wall. This also works with basic components, basically everything, almost everything, but change that to existing. It's great. Demolish, that it's as simple as that. If you have an existing desk and you demolish the desk, it disappears. That's exactly what we want. Column, you can change that to existing. This is going to demolish as well. You're beginning to get the idea. I mean, I can do this with a roof and a ceiling at the same time. I'll change these both to existing. You can see how the outlines are gray, the outlines are grayed, and now we can demolish. We can demolish that, demolish that. They disappear just as we would have expected. And you'll notice this works with a lot of different things, a lot of different components, a lot of different kinds of modeling elements, and essentially everything that has phasing, that falls into phasing, i.e. model elements, they have a phase. You can change them, and if all of that's true, then you can easily demolish them. There goes the floor. I'll take out this rail, select a couple of these rails, change them to existing. They're existing. Demolish this rail, and just like again, let's see if it works with ramps and stairs. Change the phase to existing. Demolish these. Yep, sure enough, there they go. Same with these rails. I'll even choose the model text. And I bet some of you didn't know that model text is just another model element, which means it has phasing. This is probably very circumstantial. I can't say that I've ever used model text in phasing, but hey, you have the option to do that. You can change it to existing, zoom in, you can see everything that's gray to black. It's clearly gray. There's our model text. Let's go ahead and demolish the model text. There it goes, just like anything else. And this is an interesting one. I've got a beam system. I am a big fan of beam systems. You can find them in the structural tab. There's lots that you can do with beam systems. I'll cover that in a separate video, but beam systems act the same way. They have phasing. You can change them to existing, which the power of the beam system allows the control of every beam in that system. So clearly you can see that this beam, that beam, every beam has been changed to existing. If I click on just this beam, I can see it's existing right there. It's perfect. So now I can go to the Modify tab, and demolish this entire beam system, and it's gone. So I'm actually going to undo this and show you what else can be done with the beam system when it comes to phasing. So I can choose the beam system. I'm not a fan of this button because of what it means and what it does, but I have used it because there have been some times where I've had to deal with beam systems in a different way. But there's a remove beam system, and so if I click that button, that allows every single element, every single beam in that beam system to be its own element. It's not essentially a part of any system anymore. It's its own thing. Like before, I hit undo. Like before, it's a part of the beam system. It's basically a slave to the beam system controls and everything that the beam system is. Now, by removing that beam system, everything in the beam system, all these beams are its own element. And so I can individually choose which beams to demolish in this case. I'll change those to existing. I'll demolish them one by one just like that. And I'm left with just these beams. In this case, maybe that's what I wanted. So that's a pretty quick idea of what stays, what goes. There's a lot that you can do when it comes to phasing, and essentially, again, every model element can work in this way. To end the video, let's actually create a schedule, and we'll start to get an idea of looking at different elements and introducing phasing into schedules so there's another visual aspect to it. So let's use a multi-category schedule. I don't need to bother with changing the name. Let's add a level first. Let's add the family type. I think that should do it. Yeah, that'll do it. So then let's go to the sorting. We'll sort by level. Make that as a header, add a blank line. We'll sort again by family. Let's go to the level here and just hide that field. We don't need it. Yep, that looks good. We'll hit OK. And we can see, now this is kind of weird. And does it make sense? Well, yeah, it does. It's weird because we're only seeing two elements. So this does look kind of funny. Now, why does that look funny? Well, I forgot the category, of course. Add that back in, see the category, yep, that looks a lot better. So my thought is, well, why do I only see two elements? Like I have, of all of these different elements that are in my project, I'm only seeing these two beams. Now that doesn't make sense. Now why is that? Let's go back to the schedule. And it turns out that schedules have phases as well. So I think, yes, this is by default. The phase filter of the schedule is to show previous plus new. And just like we saw in the 3D view, we have different options as far as visibility goes of all the phases. So my guess is that as soon as I hit show all, I'm going to see every element in the project once again, regardless of phase. And sure enough, there it is. You see everything on level 1 that's associated on level 1. We can see all of those beams, even the ones we've demolished. You can see that generic model text right there. So again, just like we did with in 3D, we can start to change what we see in schedules based on phasing. That's really important, and I'll touch on this again when we look at phasing itself. But I hope you learned something, specifically something about the Demolish tool in Revit and some of its functions. Again, I don't use it all that much, but please let me know if you use it, if there's something I missed, blatantly missed, if there's another use for the Demolish tool, something I missed in phasing, please let me know. I appreciate all the comments and hope you'll stick around and be around for the next video. Appreciate it. Thanks.